All right, today we are diving deep into some really fascinating material from researcher Dan Winter. We're going to unpack a wild and, pretty provocative idea, the theory of implosion.
So let's kick things off with a huge, bold idea that's really at the heart of this whole thing. This potential link between our own minds and, well, the fabric of reality itself.
I mean, seriously, think about that for a second. Can your thoughts actually change the world around you? It's the kind of question that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, right? But it's the central mystery we're digging into. Are we just along for the ride, or could we be something more? And this visual gets right to the core of it. The theory suggests that when you really focus your intention, it isn't just some passive thought in your head. It can actively influence and organize energy, literally directing the compression of electric charge. Now, the theory gives this whole phenomenon a very specific name: fractal implosive charge attraction. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know. But basically, it's just the idea that energy can be drawn inward in this repeating self-similar pattern, like a fractal. This is the key mechanism we're going to keep coming back to.
So let's get to the main event, the theory of implosion itself. And it's really important to just set aside what you normally think of when you hear that word. We're not talking about destruction here. We're talking about a fundamental creative force. So, in this context, implosion is defined as the main organizing principle of the entire universe. It's the idea that energy is constantly being drawn inward, spiraling toward a center in a way that gathers it, organizes it, and actually sustains it. And this illustrates the difference perfectly. Think about it. An explosion is a centrifugal force. It just pushes everything outward, scattering it, creating chaos. Implosion is the total opposite. It's a centripetal force, pulling energy inward, creating order and compression. Okay, so if implosion is the force, what's the blueprint it follows? Well, the theory proposes that this creative force works according to a very specific, universal geometry that you can find, well, pretty much everywhere in nature. According to the theory, it all starts here, with a simple, elegant geometric shape that acts as the fundamental building block for all energy. You can almost think of it as the universal seed that everything else grows from. But here's the cool part. This geometry isn't just a static shape. No way. It's a dynamic system that perfectly nests inside of itself, creating these amazing fractal patterns that can scale infinitely, both inward and outward. It's like a living, breathing architecture. And when this nesting geometry becomes a whole, complete field, it forms this shape, a torus, like a donut. This shape is seen as the perfect model for a self-sustaining system because it's constantly cycling energy from the outside in and then right back out again. So where else do we see this? Because this isn't just some abstract idea. The theory argues that you can see this one pattern at every single scale of existence, from the subatomic all the way up to the biological. And this brings it right back home, literally, to our own bodies. The theory suggests that this perfect nesting of waves, this fractal pattern, is the very rhythm of life itself. Your heartbeat is a wave, your breath is a wave, and they're all nesting together in this beautiful, life-sustaining pattern. And I mean, the scope of this theory is just incredibly ambitious. It's trying to use this one single principle to create a unified model for everything. From the structure of a hydrogen atom and some really complex physics, to the geometry of your own heartbeat, the nature of gravity, and even consciousness itself. It's a big swing.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? What does this all point to? It's the idea of a profoundly interconnected universe, where everything and everyone is part of this single, underlying geometric dance.
And this brings us to the core implication. According to this theory, we are not separate from this big toroidal energy field. We are in it. We are made of it. The exact same geometry that supposedly shapes galaxies and atoms is the same geometry that shapes us. And that brings us right back to where we started. To paraphrase this central idea here, consciousness isn't just a passenger passively experiencing the universe, it's the driver, capable of steering energy because it shares the same fundamental implosive structure. Which leaves us with one final, pretty mind-bending question to think about. If this theory is onto something, if we are literally built from the geometry of creation itself, what does that mean we are truly capable of? All right, today we're going to take a journey, a pretty wild one actually. It's this visual story, a kind of thought experiment, about a really beautiful and mysterious transformation. And our main character? It's not a person, it's pure geometry. We're going to follow what happens when perfect, structured order smashes right into overwhelming chaos. So, where do we start? With one single, powerful idea: form. You know, perfect structure, super intricate design, everything stable and predictable. It's basically the universe at its most organized. But you can't have order without its opposite, right? So, let's introduce an equally powerful force into the mix: chaos. This is the wild stuff, the unpredictable, the uncontrollable, that swirling energy that just completely reshapes everything it touches. So the big question is, what happens when these two primal forces finally meet? You might think it's just destruction, right? But no, it's something way more profound. It's transformation. Okay, let's really dive in. Every good story needs a main character, a protagonist. And for this journey, ours is this absolutely incredible shape of amazing complexity and perfect balance. Meet the icosahedron. So, what in the world is an icosahedron? Well, think of it as a geometric marvel. It's a solid shape, and it's built from 20, count 'em, 20, identical, perfectly flat triangles. And get this, every single edge is the same length, every angle is exactly the same. It's just a total masterpiece of symmetry. But here's the cool thing: the icosahedron isn't just some abstract shape from a math book. Nope, it has this much deeper meaning. It's one of only 5 Platonic solids. These are the shapes the ancient Greeks thought were literally the building blocks of the entire universe. For them, this one was the symbol for water, which is perfect, right? It represents flow and change, but all within a really stable structure. You could say it's the very definition of complex order. But you know how it goes. Every story needs a twist, a catalyst for change. And in our geometric tale, that catalyst shows up as this massive, powerful whirlpool of clouds, a vortex. And this isn't just any old storm. You have to think of it more like a cosmic engine. It's this incredible force of nature whose whole purpose is to pull that perfect order right into its chaotic heart. And the goal isn't to destroy it. Oh no, the goal is to kick off a profound process of change. And here we go. The journey begins. Our perfect shape, the icosahedron, is caught. It's trapped in the pull of this immense power, and its descent into the very heart of chaos is starting. You can kind of break this descent down into 3 stages. First, it's just a gentle pull, as it enters the current. But then, it starts to accelerate, spiraling faster and faster, heading straight for the eye of the storm. And finally, it gets close to the center, the point of no return. And this right here, is the climax of the whole thing. As it reaches that dead center, our icosahedron arrives at this moment of singularity. All of that beautiful, complex structure is focused down into one single, almost unimaginable point. At this point, the forces of the vortex are just overwhelming. The shape's perfect structure, it just can't hold anymore. It goes through this radical compression, all 20 faces, all 30 edges just shrinking down, folding in on themselves. I mean, it collapses down to a point so tiny, it's almost impossible to even measure. Can you imagine? All of that intricate geometry, all that perfect form, squished into a space that's, well, it's pretty much incomprehensible. And then, for just one brief, silent moment, right there in the heart of the vortex, the form is gone. It just ceases to exist. It's become a single point of pure potential. It is, for all intents and purposes, nothing. But wait, remember what we said? This is not a story about destruction. Because from that exact point of nothingness comes the final, spectacular reveal, a great release. And bam! In a silent, brilliant flash, all of that compressed potential just erupts outward. But here's the kicker. It doesn't come back as a shape. It's reborn as something completely new, something totally unbound. It becomes pure energy, a flash of light. Okay, so this is the really crucial point, the great transformation. It's an absolute change. Before, we had this structured, complex, contained thing. It was matter. And now we have unbounded, simple, infinite radiant light, pure energy. See, the icosahedron didn't just break, it was transformed into its most essential, pure state. And so, this whole visual story leaves us with a pretty deep question to think about. This journey from form to nothing, and then from nothing to light, it's not really just about geometry, is it? It's a metaphor for potential. So, if a simple shape can go through a change that radical, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are we, in all our complexity, truly capable of becoming?
Hey everyone, welcome! Today we're diving into something pretty mind-blowing from our source material. The idea that spiritual bliss isn't just some vague feeling, but a physical event you can actually measure. It's a framework that tries to connect ancient concepts like Kundalini with the hard science of physics. So let's get into it.
So, let's start with the big question that kicks this whole thing off. You know, we usually talk about enlightenment with metaphors, right? But what if it's not a metaphor at all? What if that incredible feeling of transcendence is a real, tangible electrical event happening inside your body? Something we could actually measure and maybe even learn to create on purpose.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we first have to talk about a key concept, charge density. Now, the source material says this isn't just about electricity in the normal sense. It's the actual concentration of life force. The idea is really simple. The denser this charge gets, the faster our metabolism runs, and the more aware we become. It's presented as the literal building block of consciousness.
And here is where it gets personal. The source material claims that your focus, your attention, isn't just some passive thing. When you really concentrate your mind, you are actively creating an implosive force. It literally causes electrical fields to compress and get denser. Your awareness, in a very real way, is organizing energy.
So, if our attention can actually organize energy, how does the body take that power and turn it into an experience as huge as bliss? Well, that brings us to the next big piece of this puzzle, what the source calls the body's biological bliss engine.
So the idea here is that bliss isn't just some happy accident. It's the direct result of perfect biological timing, kind of like an orchestra hitting one perfect, powerful chord. And it all comes down to three fundamental rhythms in your body that need to line up and work together in perfect harmony.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This is the core mechanic. You've got the rhythm of your breath, the low-frequency waves in your heart rate, and even the pump that moves fluid up and down your spine. And what's amazing is that they all have a natural sweet spot, a resonant frequency of 0.1 hertz. The source says that when you consciously breathe at this pace, about 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, you pull all three systems into sync. They lock in together, creating one massive, coherent wave of energy that surges through your entire body.
This whole process is described as a harmonic cascade, and it's pretty wild. It starts super small at the microscopic level with what's called the cellular fire from our energy transactions. Then, that high-frequency energy gets organized by that slower, powerful 0.1 hertz wave from our breath and heart. This unified rhythm then drives the spinal fluid, creating this huge wave that travels right up to the brain. And the final step? Our brainwaves literally tune in to this powerful, coherent signal, creating an implosive, unified state. And that feeling, according to the source, is bliss.
So, we've talked about the physics and the biology, but what does it actually feel like when this bliss engine really kicks into high gear? The source has a name for this intense experience: Kundalini.
Listen to how the source of this framework, Dan Winter, actually describes it. This gives you a real visceral sense of what's happening. It's not some gentle, peaceful feeling. He describes it as a powerful, almost violent electrical event, a lightning bolt shooting up the spine, ending with a burning fountain at the crown of the head. This is the real-world feeling of that massive charge compression we've been talking about.
But here's a super important point. It's not all just physical mechanics. There's a huge psychological piece to this. According to this model, the quality of your thoughts actually determines if that energy wave flows or if it gets stuck. A thought of pure intention, something compassionate, something you could share, creates a smooth, organizing wave. But unprocessed emotion like anger or fear acts like a slipknot in that flow. It's a blockage that just creates heat, disorder, and stops that bliss wave in its tracks.
All right, so if you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this number: 0.1 hertz. This is the key. It's the signature frequency that, according to the source, unlocks this entire cascade of coherence. It's the specific, measurable sweet spot that gets all your body's systems aligned to create the wave mechanic of bliss.
Okay, so if this is a real biological process, it begs the question, can we actually do anything to make it happen more often? The final part of this framework is all about that. It outlines what it calls a hygiene for cultivating this state of high charge.
And here's a quick look at those practical suggestions. First up, grounding. Literally, getting your bare feet on the earth to sync up with its natural frequency. Next, a diet full of live, genetically diverse food to fuel that inner cellular fire. Also, seeking out sacred natural spaces, because a blissful state is supposedly very sensitive to its environment. And finally, the inner work, practicing pure intention and cultivating an attitude of gratitude, which is said to create the perfect electrical state for all of this to connect.
So this whole framework really leaves us with one big, powerful question to think about. If your body really is a kind of biological antenna capable of tuning into these incredible states of coherence, then what frequency are you consciously choosing to tune into every single day? Through your breath, your thoughts, your food, and where you choose to be.
Hey, welcome. Today we're going to dive into something pretty amazing. A powerful experience that's actually hardwired right into your own biology. It's been documented for centuries, but it's something you can access right now. We are talking about the internal wave. Okay, so this sounds like the setup to a joke, right? But seriously, the answer tells us something incredibly profound about the human body. These groups, we're talking people separated by thousands of years in completely different worldviews, they all meticulously documented the exact same internal event. And in this explainer, we're going to map it all out for you. All right, so what is this thing? This mysterious wave that has fascinated so many different people from so many different traditions. Now, here's the really cool part. This isn't just one thing happening. It's about all the major rhythms in your body, your breathing, your heartbeat, your spinal fluid, even your brain waves, all locking into perfect step. It's like they stop being separate signals and merge into this one powerful, coherent rhythm. It's called a standing wave. You know, think of a guitar string when you pluck it. It's vibrating like crazy, but the overall shape of the wave stays in one place. That's kind of what's happening inside you, creating that deep, focused feeling people call a flow state. And get this, look at all the different names for it. A biophysicist like Itzhak Bentov calls it a standing longitudinal wave. A Taoist master calls it the microcosmic orbit. Robert Monroe, a pioneer in consciousness research, just called it the vibrational state. I mean, the words could not be more different. But, and this is the whole point, they are all pointing to the very same physiological experience. Okay, so we know what it is. Now for the big question. How do you actually turn it on? How do you activate it? Well, it turns out the conditions for it are remarkably simple and totally universal. You know, it's actually way simpler than you might think. It really just boils down to these 3 keys. First, you gotta get really still. When your body stops all its big movements, all the tiny, subtle vibrations inside finally have a chance to be noticed. Second, rhythmic breathing. A slow, steady breath literally gets your heart into a stable rhythm, which calms down your whole nervous system. And third, focused attention. When you put your awareness on a single spot, you give your body a center point to organize itself around. And when you get these 3 things to line up, the wave just shows up. It's almost inevitable. Now, a quick heads up. When this thing first appears, it's tiny. I mean, super subtle. You might feel a gentle pulse, a little rocking sensation, or maybe just a bit of warmth. The scientist Itzhak Bentov actually measured the physical movement. It was just a few microns. But he also said that once your sensitivity dials in, the feeling of it is huge. A lot of people miss it at first because they're waiting for fireworks, you know? But it starts as a whisper. So, you found that whisper, that subtle little pulse. Now what? How do you turn up the volume on this internal signal? This quote from Bentov just nails it perfectly. The core idea here is resonance. Think about it. Your attention is literally the amplifier. It's the dial you turn to make the signal stronger. When you gently place your awareness on that tiny sensation, you feed it energy and it starts to grow. Okay, first things first. To hear a quiet signal, you have to turn down the background noise, right? It's the same thing in your body. Every tense muscle you have is creating its own little vibrations, its own physical and emotional static. All that tension in your jaw, your shoulders, your belly, it's like static scrambling the signal. By consciously relaxing everything, you're quieting all that interference, and the main central wave can come through much, much more clearly. Next up is how you pay attention, and this is so important. It has to be gentle. You're not trying to force it or concentrate really hard. The best analogy is that it's like watching a candle flame. You wouldn't try to squeeze a flame to make it burn brighter, right? No way. You just watch it. You give it your calm, steady awareness. The more you calmly observe the wave, the stronger it gets. This isn't just in your head, it's physics. Think of your breath as the remote control for this wave. When you start breathing in a really smooth, balanced way, like say 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, you're basically telling your entire system to get in sync. Your heart rhythm stabilizes, and as your breath becomes this perfect, smooth wave, your spine starts to act like a resonator, and the wave's amplitude just grows right along with it. And the last piece of the puzzle is to gently lengthen your spine. Now, we're not talking about ramrod straight military posture here, not at all. It's more of a subtle internal feeling of getting longer, like there's a string gently lifting the very top of your head. What this does is it creates a little more space between your vertebrae, and as everyone from yogis to scientists will tell you, a longer path is a more conductive path. You're basically creating a clearer highway for the wave to travel on. Okay, let's get down to brass tacks. Let's talk about the practical setup and answer some of the most common questions people have when they start trying this. So, a huge question people ask is, do I have to sit up or can I do this lying down? And the answer is, you can totally do it lying down. It's fantastic for just relaxing and starting to feel those first gentle waves. The only catch is, you might just fall asleep, which is fine. But if your goal is to really cultivate that strong rising current and get into those deeper states, sitting upright is probably better. It just keeps you more alert and aligns your spine with gravity, which helps the whole process. And that brings up another thing people worry about a lot, this idea of having perfect posture. And the answer is a big, resounding no. It's not about being a perfect right angle. It's about the feeling inside. You're going for the sense of being long and open, almost like you're floating upwards, not being rigid and stiff. If you can find that feeling, the exact angle of your back doesn't really matter. And hey, you don't need some fancy meditation cushion either. A plain old chair works just fine. The trick is to just sit a little forward, away from the backrest, so your spine is supporting itself. Keep your feet flat on the floor, let your hands just rest on your thighs, and come back to that image, that string gently lifting the top of your head. This setup keeps you upright but totally relaxed. It's the perfect state. All right, so you're doing all this, you're finding the wave, you're amplifying it. So where does this all lead? What's the destination? The goal is to get to a point where the wave is self-sustaining. This is where it gets really interesting. Once that wave gets strong enough, it starts to climb. You don't make it happen, you just allow it. And the feelings are pretty unmistakable. People talk about this warmth creeping up their spine, maybe a buzzing feeling in their neck, or pressure behind their eyes. And often it ends with this tingling sensation at the very top of the head. That's the signal that the wave is becoming vertically coherent. And then you hit the breakthrough. This is when the wave just takes over. It becomes self-sustaining. You don't have to think about your breath or your focus anymore. It's just running. The way people describe it is amazing. They say it feels like being plugged into some kind of energy source. It's a state of incredible inner quiet, but also sharp perception and just effortless performance. Okay, let's just boil this whole thing down to a simple checklist you can take with you. 1. Get still. 2. Breathe smooth. 3. Keep your spine long and relaxed. 4. Find that little internal pulse. 5. Gently hold your attention there. 6. Let it get stronger on its own. And 7. Let it rise when it's ready. Don't force it. That's it. That's the whole practice. And really, this quote right here just wraps it all up in a nutshell. See, it's not about some secret, complicated technique. It's just about creating the right conditions. The stillness, the breathing, the gentle attention. When you practice these, you naturally create emotional coherence, and your own nervous system does the rest. It just self-organizes into this incredibly powerful, unified state. So here's the biggest takeaway from all of this. This wave, this deep internal coherence, it isn't something strange or foreign that you have to go out and create. It's your natural state. It's already there, inside you, just waiting to be rediscovered. So the only real question left is, are you ready to tune in? Welcome to The Explainer. What if I told you there was a single unifying principle that connects dozens of ancient and modern practices, all of them aimed at shifting human awareness? Well, today, we're diving into that exact idea. So let's kick things off with a question that, honestly, seems pretty much impossible to answer. What in the world could possibly connect the mystical traditions of ancient yogis with the, hard-nosed research of Soviet-era biophysicists? I mean, on the surface, these two worlds feel like they're universes apart. Well, believe it or not, The answer is as surprising as it is simple. Even though they were using completely different languages, different symbols, and totally different worldviews, they all independently discovered and described the exact same core process for creating these really profound shifts in human perception. So, what is this hidden mechanism? Let's break it down and see how all these different systems are really just pointing to the same foundational concepts, but, using their own unique lingo. Okay, check this out. Look at the universal agreement on where it all starts: stillness. It doesn't matter if you call it Bentoff's micro-oscillations or Winter's charge implosion or the yogic concept of sthurasukam, they all stumbled upon the exact same thing. When you get the body really, really still, these tiny, natural oscillations start to become detectable. And the pattern just keeps going when you look at the next stage, this feeling of an internal energy wave moving up the body. Whether you're talking about Bentov's standing wave or the yogic Kundalini, it's the same core experience. It's the sensation of bliss or unity, just seen through different cultural and scientific lenses. It's incredible. Okay, so how does this all build into a practical, step-by-step framework? Let's look at the universal blueprint for creating what modern science now calls coherence right inside your own nervous system. So the process really unfolds in 6 pretty clear steps. You start with stillness and slow breathing. Then you bring your attention to a single point. But the real scale, where the magic happens, is in steps 4 and 5, just allowing that internal wave to rise and then staying stable as it grows. That's the moment the whole system starts to self-organize into a coherent state. And this is the crucial point, so lean in for this one. The expansion of perception that happens next, it isn't mystical or metaphorical. It's a measurable electrical phenomenon. When your entire nervous system locks into a single unified rhythm, the brain achieves what's called global synchronization, and that's when sensory boundaries can actually start to thin out. Okay, that covers the theory, which is great, but how do you actually apply it? Let's translate this whole framework into a simple, practical routine you can literally start using today. Here is your daily checklist. And you can think of it this way. Stillness is the amplifier. Your slow, rhythmic breath is the organizer. Your point of focus, that's the pivot point for your entire physiology. And the real key is just to allow the sensations that come up to arise without judging them or trying to interfere with them. Now, remember, this is not a quick fix. It's a skill you have to cultivate. All the scientific work confirms that the effects are cumulative. So consistency, doing it daily, that's the real key to building a more coherent and resilient nervous system over time. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest practical barriers for people, and that's posture. It can feel really intimidating or just plain confusing. So let's clear up some of the most common questions that you probably have right now. The big one is always this. Do I have to sit in some complicated yoga pose on the floor? What if I just want to do this lying down in bed? Does it still work? It's a great question. And the answer really depends on your goal. Lying down, it's perfect for relaxation and for feeling those first subtle sensations. But if you're aiming for those deeper, more alert states, sitting upright is just way more effective. That vertical alignment gives you a stable alertness and just cleaner mechanics for that rising wave. Okay, so if sitting is better for the more serious work, does that mean you need a special cushion or you have to sit cross-legged on the floor until your knees scream? What about just a regular chair? Yes, a simple high-back chair is a fantastic tool. The key isn't the furniture, it's your posture. You just want to sit slightly forward so your own spine is supporting itself. The goal is to feel supported but not slumped, just maintaining a relaxed, upright central axis. Every single one of these traditions, from Zen masters to modern biophysicists, uses a simple cue just like this one. And why? Because it works instantly. This one little image helps align your spine, your breath, and all those subtle oscillations in your body without creating any tension at all. Okay, let's bring everything we've covered today back to a single, powerful takeaway. This is the one principle that really ties all of these different systems together. Seriously? Everything we've talked about, from the Soviet biophysics to ancient yogic science, it all fits right into this one summary. It's not about what you believe, it's about a reproducible process, creating internal harmony through simple, consistent practice. And that leaves us with one final thought to consider as you go off and explore this for yourself. After all the theory and all the practice, the fundamental question really remains what actually happens when every single part of you begins to resonate with a single coherent rhythm.